On May 23rd, 1973, legendary baseball manager Billy Martin went to go scout a new prospect. But what made this different was where the prospect was. At Jackson State Prison, Ron LeFlore was getting scouted by Billy Martin and would later make it all the way to the major leagues. Here's the story behind how all this happened today on Daily Sports History. Welcome to Daily Sports History. I'm Ethan Reese, your guide to a rapid deep dive into sports history every day. And today's trivia question is, who was the very first ex-con to make it to play professional baseball? So Ron LeFlore is a name you may have heard of if you were a huge Tigers fan back in the 70s. But other than that, it's a name you probably haven't heard of very much, as he was a good baseball player, but he actually made more of a name for himself because of how he made it to the majors. See, growing up, Ron didn't have the best home life. Being one of four boys, his father struggled to keep a job, and he took to the streets and started getting involved in drug dealing and even became a heroin addict, which would lead him to do some petty crimes. But worse came in 1970. Armed with a shotgun, he robbed a bar for over $30,000 with a couple of friends. A few months later, they would catch him, and he would be arrested and charged with armed robbery and be sentenced to 5 to 15 years in state prison, and he was sent to Jackson State Penitentiary. Now, because of his upbringing, LeFlore actually didn't get involved in sports very much, and he actually said that he didn't touch a baseball until he got to prison. Now, having baseball in prison was something that went back to the early 1900s, which started in Sing Sing Prison in New York in 1914, where the wardens thought inmates participating in sports would help the performance of the prison, allowing them an outlet for maybe their frustration and anger and something to focus on, instead of getting into fights and causing issues at the prison. So they took this idea and started a mutual welfare league for prisoners. And this actually became very popular, and some of the top prison teams would play exhibition games against professional teams, including the Yankees with Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig once played a game with inmates. And this got adopted over many different locations, and is something that still continued in small part to this day, depending on the severity of the prison. Or they use other sports like baseball to help the inmates. But some of these leagues actually had some people that turned out to be great ball players. Now, normally, you play baseball when you're a young person, and if you're in prison, you're taking away the best years of your life to play baseball. Sometimes you're not there very long, and you have a chance to get out and have success. And that's exactly what Ron LeFlore did. But he wasn't the first ex-con to make it to professional baseball. To get to the first one, that was back in 1935, when Edwin Alabama Pitts was released from Sing Sing Prison after serving 6 years for armed robbery, and he actually participated in that Sing Sing prison program. The Alabama Senators of the International League, who was a minor league team for the National League, wanted to offer a contract to Pitts, but this was originally rejected by the executive committee of the minor leagues. But they made an appeal to Kennesaw Mountain Landis, the commissioner of baseball at the time, who eventually overturned the committee's ruling and allowed him to play. Though he played for 5 years, he didn't actually make it to the majors, but it was a stepping stone and one that led to Ron LeFlore to possibly make it to the majors. While incarcerated at the Jackson State Prison in Michigan, he got involved in their baseball program, and he had two things going for him. He was somewhat young and a great athlete. Standing at 6'2", almost 200 pounds, he could run faster than anyone else in the prison, and he actually had good eyes to make contact with the ball. Now, they don't really keep very good stats for these prison leagues, but it's reported that his first year playing in this league, he hit .460, and the following year, he hit .560. And this caught the attention of a fellow convict named Jimmy Piskarski, who was a co-owner of a bar in Detroit, where his good friend, Billy Martin, also attended. And he got a hold of Billy through some back channels and told him about this great player in their prison league. And so Billy went to go check him out. And he was able to talk to the parole board into giving him conditions to be released so he could sign with the Tigers. And he was given the league minimum $15,000 paycheck. He was given a $5,000 bonus after getting released in July, and he played for the Clinton Pilots Class A Midwest League, managed by future World Series champion manager Jim Leyland. And that first year, he hit .277 while playing in the outfield, and he continued to move up. The following year, he hit .331 while stealing 47 bases in 102 games while playing with the Lakeland Tigers in the Florida State League. Then he made it to AAA for the Evansville Triplets, where he played 9 games. And in 1976, after an injury to their center fielder, Ron LeFlore was called up to the majors to play for the Detroit Tigers. Now, by this time, Billy Martin had been released as the manager, but Ron LeFlore, he was a good talent, so it didn't matter. In 1977, he hit 16 homers and had a batting average of .325 and showed that he belonged in the majors. But the problem was he was falling back into bad habits, getting involved with former colleagues as he was playing in Detroit where he grew up, and getting involved with people in the drug and gang scene in the area, actually bringing them into the clubhouse at times. And despite having a batting average of over .300 while playing with the Tigers, after 5 years of playing for the Tigers, when he was voted an All-Star, he was finally traded to the Montreal Expos because his name was being brought up in DEA investigations, and the Tigers caught wind of this, and they did not want to be involved. But with the Expos, he still had a strong season. He led the league in steals with 97 steals. And then after this year, he finally got a chance to hit free agency. He signed a contract with the Chicago White Sox for over $1 million. This truly was a rags to riches story. And he even released a book with the title Breakout: From Prison to the Big Leagues, which was a bestseller. He was on top of the world, and it would all start crashing down as his body was starting to break down. Because when the Tigers originally brought him into their system, they thought he was only 20 years old. But in fact, he lied about his age, and he was actually 25. So by this point, he was in his mid-30s, and his body was breaking down, and he couldn't keep up with the everyday challenges of being a major league player. So he fizzled out while with the White Sox and couldn't get attached to another team. And in 1983, he officially announced his retirement. Now, he would later be arrested on a drug and weapons charge, but the charges were later dropped as he was living with multiple people and they couldn't prove that the drugs were his or someone else's. But he did struggle to make his way after his playing career. He bounced around to different coaching positions and doing events where he signed autographs, but he couldn't make enough to make ends meet, living off his baseball pension of about $20,000 a year. And he would continuously get arrested multiple times for failure to pay child support. And unfortunately, in 2011, he had contracted an arterial vascular disease due to smoking cigarettes from when he was a teenager, and they had to amputate his leg. So now he uses a prosthetic leg and lives down in Florida with his wife, living paycheck to paycheck, only thinking about the glory days when he played baseball. And I think what we can really take away from this story from Ron LeFlore is don't take for granted what you're given. There's no reason he should have made the major leagues. He got lucky that he had a friend that knew somebody in the major leagues in prison. He got lucky that he was good at baseball and that they had a baseball team in prison, and he got the chance to live out his dream. And he did great for multiple years, but he didn't save. He fell back into a bad crowd, and he would be later out of the league in just a few years, struggling to make ends meet. Sometimes the good times don't last forever, but don't take for granted when you have the good times. And if you had a good time listening to this show, then share it with a friend, wherever you're listening, so they can become a sports historian just like you. Come back tomorrow for more daily sports history. And the answer to today's trivia question, who was the first ex-con to play professional baseball? It was Edwin Alabama Pitts in 1935.